Cyber goths are like Mad Max meets Tron meets goth.
I like the guys
They don't dance just this music though. They actually dance, a little bit heavier than that. But it was just so funny that this guy decided to put it to Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, you would kind of want to dismiss it at first, but believe it or not, in France, it has become a fashion thing, and it's worth $40 million this year to dress up as a cyber goth. So here's your niche counterculture movement here with actual dollar signs. Part of the cyber goth movement, of course, is high heels, but is gas masks, or they will spray doctor's masks to be reflective and dress up that way as well too. Lots of neon, lots of bright colors. But the fashion industry predicts it will be $40 million to them this year for kids to dress up as cyberpunks, cyber goth, that whole little niche. So, counterculture. Comic-Con this year. Faith-based entertainment stays in the shadows. Christian Comics Art Society has always had a booth at Comic-Con. This year, apparently, they didn't show up. There was the usual few people saying that God loves you, you're going to hell, that type of thing, little banners and signs. It was actually mocked by another company as well too, which did a great job for guerrilla warfare on that part. But the New York Times felt that they needed to cover this, and they had some interesting comments on here. Religion was not taboo at the convention. Thursday morning, the writer Mark Russell and the cartoonist Shannon Wheeler had great fun with a slideshow that ran through the history of the Bible in 10 minutes or so. And it's a Bible for those who go to bars. They're actually based here in Portland, Oregon. They're comic book artists and writers. And the Old Testament starts off as God's exercise in anger management with sorry for the genocide. And this soon be followed by the New Testament sequel, Apocrypha Now. But, as Christians in the United States, we've had free reign in some ways for a couple hundred years of being part of the government, a part of our beliefs being made into laws, the foundation of America, et cetera, et cetera. We've now seen in a couple of weeks a changing of that, and we're not going to debate the whole issue of what just happened with the Supreme Court and everything. But if you look at the history of the church, we've always been counterculture. The New Testament church in Acts, even they had a discussion between, do you have to be snipped to be a Christian, the Jews and Gentiles, until Peter was given the revelation by God. And even then you had Paul dealing with Peter about what would work, what wouldn't work, type of thing. So counterculture. Gaming started off as counterculture, Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s. Now look at the counterculture movement of gaming. You have PAX with 4 different conventions reaching close to 250,000 people, creating $1 billion in revenue as one convention. You got Gamescom Germany, 325,000 attendees. The city of Cologne, Germany actually shuts down school on Friday to let the kids go play video games. Okay, Gen Con, which is 50 plus years almost, Indianapolis has 68,000 attendees. All the Comic-Cons, San Diego Comic-Con now has been so corrupted, I would say, by Hollywood, the 250,000 people visiting, they can't hardly see anything, that there are now anti-Comic-Cons to the Comic-Cons.
What?
That run about 100,000 people in San Diego. We just did the Halo experience there for Sandboxing for 3D printing. We had a great turnout for that, but it was a mass of people. And they come to spend money. They want to be part of their movement. They want to have the fellowship of people. And now we're running into problems with these conventions where they are so popular that you can't get to there with your friends. You go to PAX Prime and it's sold out in 3 hours. If you got 8 buddies with you, only 2 get tickets, the rest of you are screwed, right? So now we're seeing other mini-cons come to this. And so my point to this is, as Christians, we are the counterculture to the culture. We've always been that way at the beginning. How can we do that again? How can we be that counterculture? And how do we use gaming for that? So this is a roundtable discussion in this aspect. Each of you guys are equal. Each of your ideas are equal. And we're going to talk about what that means. What do you think that means? So at the moment, we have no white markers anywhere, but I do have a pen and a piece of paper. So, we are going really retro and old school here, because we can. But, what does counterculture mean to you? So counterculture, one thing Christianity did, especially for the New World at the time, is put a value to human life. Slaves had a value, women had a value, children had a value. Prior to that in the world, the men had the value, right? We had the rights to do whatever we wanted to do on that type of thing. It was almost unheard of in that aspect. And I'm being very generalistic in that aspect, just to let you guys know. But that was a positive to what we had, to what Christianity allowed the world to see through God's love in that part. What is the first game? We talked about when we did introductions here, the first game you ever played. And some of us are really old. We played Pong, arcade machines, and that type of thing. But let me ask you this. What is the first game you ever played that actually made you think about the message in the game? Games can make you think. They can make you question why you believe what you believe, why you're doing what you're doing. They can become counterculture in that aspect. They can teach an element of culture. What aspect of Christianity right now is counterculture to our current culture? Well, if we were to take, obviously, to make a game as a counterculture game to the current cultural movement would be a horrendous game. I mean, you couldn't hit every single one. And you should, because you'd be making a fruit salad that wouldn't taste good at all in any way, shape, or form. It'd be like lime jello with the fruit into it. Nobody wants that. So, if we were to pick one of these characteristics, we've got marriage, you've got the values of compromise, integrity, politics, God's creation, the purpose of life that the world says is just pleasure. If we were to distill or take one point of this, what do you see as a key aspect that you would want to emphasize in a game as a counterculture to the current culture? But if we want to teach and put an emphasis behind a certain cultural trait or characteristic that's counterculture to this world right now. And I like the idea of selflessness, right? Because, I mean, man is inherently evil if you consider selfishness to be evil, right? We were born that way. Romans says that as believers we acknowledge that. We're fallen in that case. If we teach selflessness as counterculture to the culture right now, which is all about what we can have, who's got what, have whatever you want to have, you know, and that culture's been around for eons, really. How do we do that? So if we do this, gaming as an element, I mean, right now gaming is on track to beat the toy industry, close to $88 billion next year. The toy industry was $85 billion this year. It's already past Hollywood, it's already past TV. More people watched live streaming on Twitch in one day than all of the NFL the last 10 years combined.
Really?
Is that just in Korea or is that
No, that was worldwide in one day on
was
Twitch.
a joke,
So,
wasn't it?
I mean, and you know, the Seahawks, hey, you know, what can we say? We made it a really exciting ending though. So we
Yeah,
did.
that was an interesting.
That pumped up the ranks just a little bit. Nonetheless though, this is a medium that doesn't die. I mean, digital just doesn't die. There are people playing games 30 years ago, like Pong, they're still having fun with it. I pull out my Atari 2800 and the kids are playing basketball and they're laughing. They spent an hour playing basketball on that thing, right? So retro is now cool again. Retro doesn't ever disappear.
Retro will never not cool.
Retro will never die, right? Now, books, however, on the hand, any other form of media outside of gaming, though, has a life expectancy. And though vinyl is coming back to Barnes & Noble, it's still not as big as gaming can be. Gaming really is running a lot of things. So if you want to attack the culture, it's a medium that can do that very effectively and very cost effectively, in my opinion. If we were to pick, as we said, selflessness as a characteristic that we want to show the world through a game.
How?
Now you've got that lens to appear on it. What is the best mechanism inside a game to teach that? So culture-wise, a cultural item is very popular, right? It has to be very popular to be culture, pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going to counterculture, should we even look at gaming?
Yeah, why not?
Should there be something that's anti-gaming that we should pursue to show this?
Yeah, why not? What would that be?
That's what I'm saying. You guys are gamers, but what would be the opposite of what you do? As a counterculture movement to gaming in some ways, to teach selflessness, there are a lot of people who identify themselves as gamers. They have their gamer ID on Xbox. Their achievements are tied to that. They share with their friends. I mean, ego is part of the driving mechanic, a lot of game mechanics, especially for monetization purposes. How do we flip that? How do we say we believe in you in a selfless way outside of a game? So in movies, you get immersed into an environment for a couple of hours, max. In a book, and how fast you can read, it can be a matter of days or a week that you're immersed into that world if you get into it. But in a game, it can be years. You can be immersed into it. EVE Online. We just saw some amazing battles in EVE Online. Let me tell you, that wiped out tens of thousands of real dollars, and people put their life into it. There are these huge battleships at EVE Online that take years to build, and believe it or not, there are hunter-killer squads, group of guys who've never met each other but online, who will stake out certain areas to find this huge item that somebody may have, and as soon as that person pops online, they attack. One of these stocks took 2.5 years, not in game time, in real time, to stalk out to take out this kill. Okay? That's commitment.
That's not going
That is commitment that didn't exist 10 to 15 years ago. That's commitment that exists now in a video game of ones and zeros. So we're going to go counterculture to that commitment. I mean, that's commitment. I mean, their life force is into that. How do we get them to look at something that's being selfless, utilizing gaming as a mechanic? I mean, how do you get that get people to commit to that? When we have a problem in the church today, just getting people to commit to Sundays. I mean, and granted, I'll bring this up as an example. I do a camp for foster kids called Royal Family Kids Camp. We have an 89% retention rate of our volunteers. It's brilliant. We've had people there for 10 years who come every year, no matter how awful these kids are, right? Our problem is that we get people so lax because they're so used to everything that we have to remind them of the training capabilities because they've been there so long, right? So we have that problem as well too. But they're committed to it. You know, they know how they can reach these kids. Can we use gaming as a counterculture to get people to commit their lives in such a way to want to change? We are almost out of time. So in this aspect of counterculture that Christianity is, you get to the point, we have the truth. One of the messages that we have in the Bible is the truth. How do we illustrate the truth of God's Word through gaming that makes it A, one, engaging, that people want to play it, B, emphatic to the character, that there potentially could be character development along the way. The fact that it's almost an anti-game in some ways that the media would actually pursue and say, let's delve into this deeper. What am I seeing in this game that would allow somebody to expend years of their life playing, potentially? The great thing about this device, I think, is the fact that everybody's equal. I mean, we had a renaissance in gaming, except for the Android people, that's true. But the idea of a smart device, we'll go general with that. I mean, you can be a 14-year-old kid and make a great game on this thing and make a name for yourself. Or you could spend millions of dollars and try to make a name for yourself as well, too, and fail just as well. God, I think, has given us a great tool to use. We are in a golden era in that aspect, that we can really impact the culture that's around us with truth. The great thing about this is that we're in a long play. We already know what the end is. We already know how it all works out. It's this middle time that we can use to say how God is going to use us to reach others through gaming, and in a different way, be the counterculture to the culture on that part. Now, you said we should be developing games for the Christians, for the Christian community, and I do agree with that as well, too. The issue that we have in North America, especially for gaming, is that nobody cares. And I say this not to be disrespectful. I've been at multiple children's pastors' conferences, multiple church conferences where gaming has come up, and nobody at the moment, except for a few studios that put the money to it, including the American Bible Society, I'm part of this, sees gaming as a relevant outreach yet. Now that's changing, but at the moment, the main fundraising devices for a lot of Christian publication companies out there, and a lot of them have actually fallen down because of this, is vacation Bible school material and Sunday school material. That is where a lot of them still make the money at. And if you are a Christian author right now and you have in your Lucado, you'll get marketing representation. If you're anybody else, you're not going to see anything. Now we are seeing an uptick in the number of Christian bookstores that are being created. There's actually been an uptick from where we've seen a downfall in the last several years. But there's still not enough Christian bookstores out there to actually push Christian content, especially gaming, to a Christian community. So in that aspect, we've got places like Steam, iTunes, the rest of it to get the word out. But creating a Christian game just for Christians, as admirable as that is, I think we have a broader message to go out there. Now, Christians playing non-Christian games every day. Absolutely. Can we go against Mass Effect 3? We talked about a game a couple of years ago where you were in a world and you had to figure out what this religion was. And it was open-ended aspect. You had to find out where the truth was on this. And you were an alien, or we actually used in geometric forms. And you discover this world and what the truth was. And something like that, being open to this world of mine. This world of mine? Open Sky. No, hold on. I'm getting
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. It was almost similar to what we talked about in that aspect a couple of years ago. And something like that has a broad appeal to an audience that we then bring in to the church. But will the church ever use culture like gaming to bring people in to know Christ? I don't know the answer to that yet. I know there's a lot of money out there, but I don't see them putting into it yet because they haven't seen the big impact of it yet. I'm hoping that changes. We've got 3 opportunities right now. You've got Second City Studios with the Aetherlight. You've got the Guardians of Ancora by the Scripture Union guys out of England. And they're trying to make an emphasis. They've had $1 million budgets to do all this and to go forward. And we'll see what type of impact they have in the next couple of years. But at the moment, I don't see the Christian church in general, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Episcopalians, the whole gamut, societies like the American Bible Society, even World Vision, actually being able to understand and grasp this tool yet to make an impact. Now, hopefully we can do that eventually, and that's what we're all striving for. And I think, being the counterculture to that, using some unique mechanics and actually engaging with the player, this allows us to experiment with that more cost effectively than it does to create new material, new movies, and everything else. There is a resurgence in faith-based movies. I just got to see with Dave Almgren, who's been here before, a movie called Woodlawn, based in Alabama, Birmingham in 1973, the last segregated high school. And it was a great movie that showed how prayer can help change an attitude in a school that was racially divided with violence and actually overcome a whole city. It was well done. And in 2 hours, you really got that story. I've yet to see that done this way, though. But there's a ton of content out there for it. And so at 2:25, I'd like to thank you guys for here. We can continue on this discussion again because there is no answer yet to all this. But I hope you guys are thinking about how to be counterculture to the current culture that's out there. Because we're called to be salt and light. But how do we make this unique enough to get the media's attention and people's attention to be that salt and light?